Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show, and today we're going live inside our 53-man franchise Dynasty League draft. That's right. I'll bring it right up to you. And here we go. We are live inside the draft room and bring it down here. We are in the 8th round. This is a 53-man best ball dynasty slash franchise league. Again, 53-man rosters. We're doing start 11 offensive players, start 11 defensive players, along with a kicker. We've got it all in this league. The defensive scoring is pumped up so that the top defensive players are right in line with the top offensive players. For instance, TJ Watt finished 5th in scoring, according to the scoring system last season. Khalil Mack was 9th. There's 4 or 5 total defensive players that were in the top 20 in scoring. We still haven't seen the defensive players completely pumped up the board as much because I think most of us in this draft have not even played IDP dynasty leagues. Some of us have, so we have a little feel for it. But anyway, the scoring is pumped up in such a way that the defensive players get 10 points for a sack, 10 points for an interception, 2 points for a solo tackle, 1 point for an assist. There's other additional points in there for passes defensed, quarterback hits, so that defensive players can have a little enhanced scoring. And when you take into consideration, we also have to start 11 defensive players each week. I'm still racking it through my brain trying to figure out how many offensive, how many defensive players I'm going to have. We're going to see what some of the others in the league have to think about that. So let's see who's in the chat room with us. And right now we are on the 8-10 pick here. And right there, you see it. It was originally my pick. I just traded it to Mojo Forever earlier this morning for his 11th round pick, and I picked up his 26th first in doing so. So we can go ahead and bring up my team and give you a look at what I've got going on here. And so we have Trevor Lawrence at the top. This is a super flex format. Again, we said we were starting 11 offensive players. Now, of course, we don't have linemen, so the 11 players still include multiple wide receivers and flex positions. So we have a total of 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wideouts, and a tight end. Then 3 regular flex spots, as well as the 1 super flex spot. Then we threw in a kicker, and then we've got our defensive players. I've grabbed Josh Allen to stack up with Trevor Lawrence. So I've got the QB sack artist stack going for me in Saxonville. And we have to start 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 3 D backs, and then 2 flex IDPs, and then the rest is all the bench here. So we'll be starting 23 players each week. That means there'll be 30 guys on the bench. But again, it's best ball, so it'll be your best players thrown in. We wanted to essentially create a league that mirrored the NFL as best as possible. And I think we've done so here. And I've got a few minutes here to go live with you guys to discuss it and see what your thoughts are on the format. What are your thoughts going forward? Is this a viable style league that could gain popularity? I love the format. Creates a huge startup draft and one that can take a little while to get through, but it's very exciting nonetheless with the new format here. So let's go back into this room. Right now, we're again in the eighth round. Now, there's been, let me count them here. How many defensive players do we have picked? TJ Watt went first. As I mentioned, he was the top scorer of the defensive players last year. He went at the 211 to Steve. And then 2 rounds later, Micah Parsons was taken at the 411. Foysad Olakun from Jacksonville, their big tackle gathering linebacker in the middle. He went third for defensive players over to Kyle. And that's 3 defensive players. We then had, let's see, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, Max Crosby, and Aiden Hutchinson all go in the 5th round. So people started jumping on them. Like I said, I was one. I grabbed Josh Allen. So that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Miles Garrett's 8. Kyle Hamilton 9. Roquan Smith would be 10. Then I grabbed Antoine Winfield. That's 11. Will Anderson 12. So we're at 12 defensive players taken through, let's see, 7 rounds would be 84, another 9, 93. 12 defensive players through the first 93 players selected. We'll bring you right up to date here in the 8th round. We're waiting on Mojo forever. He's got a couple picks back to back. Mojo has gone the route of trying to win now by moving up the draft board, especially in this 8th round. He's already grabbed Baker Mayfield, then Bo Nix back to back. He did not have a quarterback up until that point. So he's got Mayfield and Nix. Let's bring up Mojo's team. Mojo, here's his squad. He's got Baker on top, Etienne and Jacobs in his backfield. CeeDee Lamb, his 1st-round pick. And he's got Tyreek and Garrett Wilson, as well as Debo and Mike Evans at wide receiver. Then there's Bo Nix, his slotted second quarterback in the super flex spot. So he has not gone defensive player yet. Let's see what he has in mind coming up here with these 2 picks. He does not have his 9th rounder. He traded that away to Matt, who's Jam Enke. Then he has his 10th rounder. He did give up his 11th to me. So Mojo has 3 picks here. If you count these 2 in the 8th, then the 1 in the 9th. He did pick up an extra 10th rounder there. So he'll have 2 picks going in the 10th. So Mojo is looking at, let's see, he's got, oh, I'm sorry, he only has these 2 picks. Then he will not pick again until the 10th round. So he'll have 4 picks through the next 30 picks or so, let's call it, to fill out his roster. And let's go back over to the rosters, bring it back over to mine so I can kind of go over what I've done so far. Again, I started at the 110 and I took Jamar Chase with that pick. My 2nd-round pick, I took Jordan Love, and the guy after me was upset that I took Love. He took Justin Herbert, but then I went ahead and offered him Jordan Love just to see what he would give me in return, and he decided to give me his 3rd and 4th-round picks just for Jordan Love, my 2nd-round pick, and I went ahead and took that. You slide back up the board here, you can see I traded this pick here, Jordan Love, and acquired this and this pick, which turned out to be Trevor Lawrence and Brandon Ayuk, which I love personally. Trevor Lawrence definitely is pretty close to Jordan Love in street value. Trevor Lawrence definitely could have a career that surpasses Jordan Love. So I don't feel bad about that. And then I got a free Brandon Ayuk on top of that. So I'll take that deal all day. I do understand Foss Boss wanting Jordan Love as a Packer fan. Jordan Love has a great future ahead of him. Very many stackable assets there for the Packers and Jordan Love coming forward in these next few rounds. Foss Boss did just grab that first stacking option in Jaden Reed to go along with Jordan Love. So I like that selection from Foss Boss. Now we're just waiting on Mojo to make his selections. So if we go down to my squad, again, I started with Chase, traded down, grabbed Trevor Lawrence there and AJ Brown with my pick in the third. Then I got Brandon Ayuk with the next pick. And then if we go back up to the picks here, so I had Brandon Ayuk, I took there, I took DK Metcalf at the 410. Then it got to me on the wraparound, and I went defense and grabbed Josh Allen. I wanted to make sure, being IDP in this heavy defensive scoring, again, 10 points per sack. So Josh Allen had 17 or 17 and a half sacks last season. That took up about half of his points. He ended up with about 400 points scored last season in this format. Um, so comparatively speaking, I do think once we look back on this draft afterwards, it may look like I got a steal there with a stud sack artist in Josh Allen. Um, and then a couple rounds later, I grabbed Antoine Winfield. The second defensive back off the board, Kyle Hamilton, was taken about a dozen picks earlier. He was the top defensive back on the board. So if you get those playmaking defensive backs who gather up a lot of tackles, get a few sacks, get a few interceptions, and just are all over the field making things happen, those are great assets in this format as well. Both of my guys that I selected, I looked at contract situations. Both of those guys came up. They were done with their fourth seasons this past year, so they were in talks with their teams. Both of them were franchise tagged initially, and then later signed mega monster deals with their teams. Josh Allen got a 5-year, $150 million deal from the Jaguars. Antoine Winfield got a 4-year, $84 million deal from the Bucks. So they're locked into their roles till their age 30 season. Something that I really like building my defense around in that case. So we'll see how the defensive players get drafted going forward. I expect to see quite a few more taken in these next 5 to 6 rounds than have been taken up until this point. If you look at it from a round by round perspective, I'm not going to give away my strategy on those with us being here right in the draft room. But I just wanted to give you guys a peek at this format. It's very interesting, exciting. As we know, 53 rounds could take a while. We're doing a slower draft process, just an 8-hour clock. And so we got plenty of time to make moves, discuss trades, build our franchises out. 53 rounds, as you can see, if I slide down the board. Typically, most of our dynasty drafts end right around here, rounds 25 to 30, somewhere in there. Well, in this format, we go deep. Here we are. Here's the rounds 30s. Here's the 40s, and then up to around 53. So, as you can imagine, this draft is going to take a while. I would expect this one. Now, this is day 3 of this draft. We banged out 2.5 rounds the first day. We didn't start till about 4 or 5 o'clock. Knocked out 2.5 rounds yesterday. We really got after it. We knocked out about 6 rounds. And then this morning, we started with the selection of Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix back to back by Mojo Forever. So let's take a look at a couple of the other rosters on here. We can start with the Fantasy Reaper. Brandon, he had the 101 and of course went Josh Allen. And let's take a look at the Reapers lineup. He's got Josh Allen up there. He's gone running back heavy to get things started off. He took Brees Hall with his 212 pick. And then, of course, we had the third round reversal. So he wasn't picking again then until the 3-4 turn, which if you look over here, you can see he grabbed Jared Goff and Chris Olave to get things going at wide receiver. So he had Josh Allen and Jared Goff in place there as his solid quarterback start, along with Brees Hall and Chris Olave. Then he went ahead and grabbed Rashad White and traded back with Chris, the C Avant one there. That's Chris. And Fantasy Reaper traded back to the 8th round and picked up a future first rounder from Chris. And Chris grabbed Myles Garrett there, the stud defensive lineman from the Browns. Massive points for him. Great selection there. The Reaper then was able to, if we continue down on his team, he has started off running back heavy. He picked up Derrick Henry with that pick in the 8th. As you can see, he's just got Olave and Kupp at this point at wide receiver, but he's sitting on Brees Hall, Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, who he grabbed at the 801, and Derrick Henry. Ramondre, freshly off his newly signed deal, moved up the boards now. Recent startup drafts, he had been going around round 10, I would say, 9, 10. Now he's pumped up to the beginning of the 8th round as the franchise tailback for the New England Patriots. Some may be surprised by that signing. Not everyone was sure what the Patriots would decide to do with Ramondre, but now they've definitely made him the centerpiece of that new offense with new quarterback, Drake May, new offensive coordinator, new head coaching staff. Everything's going to be looking nice and fresh and new for the Patriots. I'm excited to see what they bring to the table this new 2024 season. Who knows? There could be some growing pains, or it could be set on fire right off the get-go. We'll see. A lot of that depends on the development of Drake May at quarterback and what he's able to do. His wide receiver room is relatively weak, I guess you could say. I mean, who's the top dog there? It could be Kendrick Bourne, could be one of the 2 new flashy rookies that they grabbed, and Jalen Polk or Javon Baker. Still have Hunter Henry in the building. So there's Antonio Gibson out of the backfield behind Stevenson. So a lot of fresh faces in New England. It's really hard to say right now what we're looking at. Could they blow up like the Houston Texans offense last season, or could they fall flat on their face and struggle this first year for Drake May? It'll be interesting to see what New England brings to the table. It's not an easy division by any stretch. I mean, you still have the Bills with Josh Allen there, the Dolphins looking strong still on offense. They've got Bradley Chubb on defense. You've got then you have the Jets, of course, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, and their stout defense. A lot of exciting things going on in the AFC East. and it had been a division, or has been a division, I should say, definitely dominated by the Bills over the last few seasons. But now there's some very strong contenders in the Jets and Dolphins. A lot of people looking at the Bills as maybe falling back a step now with Stephon Diggs leaving the building. But uh, the question is, with the Bills, does Diggs's uh, removal really hinder them that much, or are they able to supplant that with the additions of Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel and the uh, the emergence of Khalil Shakir and definitely Dalton Kincaid looking to get more targets his way. So is it more of a situation like the Chiefs where Tyreek Hill left, but Mahomes definitely didn't miss a beat, and he just, aside from Travis Kelsey, figured out a way to spread the ball around more. And I think that's what at least I foresee from Josh Allen. He's gone number one in both of the last most recent dynasty startups I've done. And so uh, I think Allen will have no problem sharing the ball with his teammates. Kincaid, in my opinion, probably benefits the most, and we'll see the highest target share of those receivers. But between Coleman, Shakir, and Curtis Samuel, they'll sort of divvy up the rest of the looks there in Buffalo. And it should be an exciting offense continuing there with the Bills. Um, so let's take a look at the most recent picks here. Of course, we had Jaden Reed going to Foss Boss. Let's take a look at Foss Boss's team now. We'll go check it out this way. Foss Boss. Uh, see if I can scroll down. Or do I need to scroll up? Having a little difficulty. Well, let's just go to the next team. We've got Steve. Steve has Patrick Mahomes, who he was able to grab at the 102, of course. Then he's got James Cook, Devontae Adams, and stacked Mahomes with Travis Kelsey. He's grabbed Tua as his second quarterback. He's got Aiden Hutchinson and TJ Watt to create a stellar defense. That's a very good base to start on. I love Watt and Hutchinson's potential points there. Hutchinson, of course, the centerpiece of the Lions defense for years to come. He's only 23 years old. TJ Watt, one of the, if not the top defensive player in the league. So Steve definitely making sure he has a strong defense in this format. Now, speaking of the format, I was thinking about things and looking at it. There's a way you could almost just in this format create a monster just off of defense. If you wanted to go uh, 10 or 11 defensive players out of your first 15 picks, you could do it that way and just create a monster on defense and try and win things that way. Because these defensive players, now I know that the projections here, if we bring up IDPs and go to projections here, we only see 301 from Zaire Franklin, right, in the projections. But if you bring him up, he's the top guy on the board. Now I can't do it in this. Let's see if I can. No, it doesn't. It doesn't let me show how many points he actually scored. Now, I'd have to back off the draft board. I don't want to do that right now. But Zaire Franklin scored like 400 points last year, actually. So these projections are off somehow. according to our scoring system. Most of these guys scored probably 100 points more than what they are projected. Okay, so if you compare that to, let's say, you got Jordan Addison on the top of the receiver board here. He's projected 319. Amari Cooper projected 342. Rashee Rice, who knows what he should be projected at. You got McLaurin there at 310. So you're looking at these are the top receivers that are on the sleeper draft board. They're somewhere between 310 and 343. Those IDP guys that are at the top of the board, they're going to score more points than these guys right now. But I also understand the scarcity question as well, because there is, if you compare offense to defense, well, in the real NFL, there's five offensive linemen on the field at all times. In fantasy, we don't use offensive linemen, so we have more offensive players being picked earlier on because the talent pool on offense is going to dry up much quicker than the defensive talent pool will. Defenses have 11 players on the field, and all 11 of those players can score points for us, fantasy wise. So the defensive talent pool is much deeper, and I think that's being reflected here in our draft selections. Nobody, I can't really say, has made any foolish selections at this point. They all have made sense, in my opinion. To go past Steve's team, we look at Chris's team. He's got CJ Stroud, who he took at the 103, then followed it up with Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got Saquon, Michael Pittman, and Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. He's grabbed David Njoku, and then Myles Garrett, as I mentioned earlier, on defense. So he's off to a solid start there, looking good. Next up, we have the DeLorean. Chris also, he started off with Jalen Hurts. Then his next pick was Malik Neighbors. And now he grabbed Max Crosby on the defensive side. Chris has got a nice, strong, young team. Look at that. He's got 4 rookies that were all drafted in first rounds of your rookie drafts, dynasty rookie drafts. I mean, he's got Neighbors, Xavier Worthy, Brock Bowers, and Jaden Daniels. So he's building a nice, strong, young team. Devon A-Chain, love A-Chain's potential this season. Next up, we have, let's see who else I can bring up here. We got Mojo. There's Mojo's team. Okay. So what I got to do is bring it up this way. There we go. Mojo's team. Like I mentioned earlier, he waited on quarterback, and it looks like it's playing out well for him. Of course, this is a best ball format, so you don't necessarily have to go elite quarterback to build a good quarterback room in best ball. So far, he's got Mayfield and Bo Nix down here. Then at running back, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs. And then at receiver, he's got a great starting 5 there so far with CD, Tyreek, Garrett Wilson, Debo, and Mike Evans. Big points there. And he is on the clock with 2 selections here. It'll be interesting to see which way Mojo decides to go with his picks. If we go take a look at the next team, let's see who we've got here. Will it let me take a look here at some of the others? I want to bring up Frosty's team. Okay, let's do it this way. Can do it this way. Yeah. So Frosty's team, Colin, obviously big Bengals supporter, went Joe Burrow to start things off, then Dak Prescott. maybe a little earlier than most might see, but I have no problem taking Dak at this position right in the middle of the second round at the 207. Finished third in most formats scoring last season. I think he was second in this format. We do give 0.25 for throwing first downs. It's a full PPR, full point for first down, receiving or rushing, and then a quarter point for throwing first downs. Um, Followed the back-to-back quarterbacks up with Drake London, and then took Kyron Williams. Followed that up with Roma Dunze and T. Higgins, and then has Joe Mixon. He traded his pick with Mojo to acquire a 12th rounder and two future seconds. So a nice deal there for Frosties. And he's looking with he's got a solid offensive build going for him with three nice young receivers in London, Adunze, and Higgins. Decent backfield started with Kyron and Joe Mixon, the new Texans running back, and two great quarterbacks in Burrow and Dak. Then we go over to Brijek here. Brijek? Brandon, I'll just say, because that's his first name. Brandon's done a lot of maneuvering so far. He started off the draft with Lamar, then went Bijan in the second round, then grabbed the falling Puka Nakua to the middle of the third round. That's a fall for Puka. Got nice value there. Grabbed Jalen Waddle in the fourth round, added an extra pick, and grabbed Micah Parsons. Then followed that up with Nick Bosa and Will Anderson. So he's got three stud defensive players in Parsons, Bosa, and Will Anderson. Now, this round, he's had two picks. He took Nick Chubb and Jake Ferguson. So he's got a solid, very versatile build so far. Still just sitting on one quarterback. Only had two receivers, but like I said, he does have three monsters on defense going for him. So he's chosen that route to build his team. Next up, we've got Ryan. I am Habdi. Ryan's got three quarterbacks going, so a strong quarterback build with Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, and then Kirk Cousins. He's grabbed a couple of tight ends. We do have a full point tight end premium in this format. So tight end's getting an extra little bump there. He grabbed Sam Laporta and Trey McBride in back-to-back rounds. And then with his two picks in the sixth, was able to grab two nice young guys in George Pickens and Tank Dell. So Havdi got a nice valuable roster going for him there. Foss Boss has moved all over the place. He acquired Jordan Love from me in the second round there, gave up his third and fourth, but did move back up in the third and grab Jonathan Taylor. So he's got his two QBs in Love and Herbert, stud wide receiver in Jefferson, stud running back in JT. Then he grabbed Kyle Pitts over here in the middle of the fifth. In the sixth, he decided to go with his first defensive player in the great all-around linebacker with the Ravens, Roquan Smith. And then, as I mentioned earlier, got the stack with Jaden Reed and Jordan Love. And we had my squad. Here is Matt's squad. And he's got Marvin Harrison and Nico Collins at receiver, along with Devontae Smith and Zay Flowers. So nice young stud wide receiver room there. Kyler at quarterback. Dalton Kincaid, as we talked about earlier with Buffalo, looking to get tons of targets with Stephon Diggs leaving. And he then grabbed his favorite young running back in Jonathan Brooks. Finally, we'll take a look here at Kyle's team before we dip out here. Kyle on the end at the turn, a 1-2 turn, scooped up Christian McCaffrey, then Isaiah Pacheco and Kenneth Walker at running back. He has one wide receiver in stud Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has Brock Purdy going for him at quarterback and Mark Andrews at tight end. And then has one defensive player in still, I apologize. I have no idea how to correctly pronounce his name, but Forswad Olokun, the middle linebacker for the Jaguars, big point getter. All right. So just wanted to give you guys an inside look at this draft. Very interesting new format we've got going here. And so love the new prospects of this. We'll continue on with this draft in future shows. We'll continue showing you live where we're at. I'm going to try and hit this back up Sunday night when I get back from my kids' AAU basketball tournament. Thank you for joining the Birdhouse. As always, never stop working.